Hello students, let's continue with our chapter 3. Today we are going to study about World War II and outline. Yesterday in our chapter 3, that is Movement Towards a New World, we studied about what were the factors or causes of the World War II. What made once again for all the nations to fight among themselves. And we realize that there are 7 factors. For example, fierce nationalism, groupism, militarism, failure of the League of Nations, Treaty of Versailles, imperialistic policy, ambition of Adolf Hitler, and the German attack on Poland. Today, let's continue. Keep this all in your mind, but let's continue about what was an outline for the World War II. With the commencement of the World War II, the world was again divided into 2 groups. By the beginning of the World War II, the world was once again divided into 2 groups. We are going to see this, which are these 2 groups. On one side was a group of allied nations led by England and France. So students, one side which was allied group. Remember, one side was the allied group led by England and France. On the other side was a group of Axis nations comprising of Germany, Italy and Japan. Students, we know in the beginning only when we started the chapter, we saw about the fascism, Nazism as well as in militarism in Japan. And from there we know that how the seeds for the World War II had started spreading. And so, that is how these 3, that is Germany, Italy and Japan, are one side and they are in the side of the Axis. Whereas England and France at the side of allied nations. Besides this, some other factors with war-driven mentality had entered into this. Japan attacked the American Navy at Pearl Harbor. You have to remember this, students. Japan had attacked America's Navy at Pearl Harbor. Japan started doing something. Okay? And then we will see what happens, how it results into. Okay? So, make a bracket and underline that Pearl Harbor. As a result, America gave up on its neutral stand and retaliated. So, America said, we're not going to keep quiet. They retaliated. They also started doing something to Japan now. And what is that? It joined the allied nations. Because Japan was whose side? Japan was with Germany and Italy. Axis side. So what? America joins allied nations. In the allied group already we have England and France. Now America also joins allied nations, thus making it stronger. So allied nation has now become stronger. When the war was going on in full swing, America dropped atom bombs on the 2 Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Students, when the war was going on, that time, who drops the bomb, atom bomb? Student, America puts the bomb on Japan's 2 cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Underline this. In order to stop Japan from moving any further, 1,24,000 Japanese citizens lost their lives and there was absolute destruction. Japan surrendered 11th August 1945 and the World War II came to an end. Students, recent in August, you must have remember on 6th and 9th of August, that is, Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan was bombed. By whom? It was attacked by America. First, who had started attacking? First, it was Japan who had attacked American Navy at Pearl Harbor. And so, America is with the allied side, making hand with them, coming together into allied groups against Axis. When the war was going on, that is the time America drops the bomb on Japan's Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Everything was lost. A lot of destruction was there. Japan realized its mistake. Thereafter, Japan surrendered, and now, students, if you go to see, the effects of the bomb blast were being, that was the consequence was too much that they could realize for so many years went by, and still Japan was bearing up the consequences. But now Japan has become very much a developed country, and you will see them. They are progressing a lot. And so now let's turn the page and see what we are going to study about. So Japan surrendered on August 11, 1945, and thus the World War II came to an end. Now students, let's see the effects of the World War II. What are the immediate effects? What happened? In the World War I also we saw there were many effects. How the people had lost their jobs and many people died. And so many things were there. Unemployment, no? And so now let's study about the effects, what happens after World War II. The first is the economic effect. This war had caused horrendous destruction in the world. All the involved nations had incurred huge expenses. America had spent $350 billion and other nations had spent more than $1,000 billion. Students, see the amount. I had told you they had started building up the arms and ammunition. They were producing many weapons. And so students, how much money America had spent? America had spent $350 billion. And the other nations more than $1,000 billion. Imagine, and students, in what? Destroying one nation destroying the another nation. Lot of loss. Not only the human loss, but all the other ways. Okay? And then property worth, the same had been destroyed too. England lost its property worth 2,000 crore, and about Germany one can't imagine. England had lost what, student? How much property? Worth 2,000 crore. Imagine the amount of money wasted on war. And then Germany, one can't imagine. Germany, you know, in the First World War also, Adolf Hitler's policy was what? What did they want to do? They wanted whatever it is, they were not ready. They had the Paris Peace Treaty, they just rejected that. And they are getting into war once again. And so, when Germany, one can't imagine the expenses, the loss that they had. The nations of the world gave more importance to the productions of arms and ammunition. So there was a scarcity of things for basic needs. Production reduced, inflation increased, people were struggling for livelihood. So students, you see, as I told you, they were producing more and more weapons, arms and ammunitions. There was a scarcity of things. They did not bother that the people are getting their basic needs or no. Intention was what? They focused on militarism. They made the military training compulsory. They started producing the weapons. Who are these day? The different nations were fighting about whom we are studying. And so, students, what happened? The life was not important for them. And the prices went very high. The inflation increased. Then people were struggling for livelihood. They were not getting proper food and all basic needs to have. Then there was scarcity of necessary goods in the market. The economic life of people was shattered. As a result, the nations of the world were pushed into an economic depression. There were major changes in the world, politics and economy. So students, what happened? In the market, necessary things were not available. Okay? The market was not producing what was needed for the people. Economic life of people was shattered. There was no proper things. People had become poor or poorer than what they were before. They had become more poor or poorer than what they were before. And so as a result, the nations of the world were pushed into an economic depression. That is how the whole world had to face the wave of depression. And what type of depression? Economic depression. there were major changes in the world politics and economy. There were major changes in the world politics and economy because of the war. That was the first effect. What was the first effect? Economic effect. Now let's see about the communalism in China. What happens? Many nations of the world were impressed by the way Russia had made a fast progress with its communist measure with the Bolshevik Revolution 1917. We have studied about the Bolshevik Revolution in the previous chapter, and you know how China was. But here what happens to Russia? They had made a fast progress. They had progress. Why? With the communist measures. We have seen what happened. Now, with the Bolshevik Revolution, that was some revolution in 1917. China too was impressed. Japan had become weak after the Second World War. Under these circumstances, its control over China had receded. Japan's control over China had was decreasing. It had come down. They had already become weak after the Second World War. Why, students? What had happened in the Second World War? Who had bombed whom? First Japan into America, and afterwards America on Japan's two places, that is Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After that Japan surrendered. Now Japan is very weak. Its control over China also is gone. Okay? Taking advantage of this, Mao Zedong established communist rule in 1949 at the end of the revolution in China. What happened? China was impressed by Russian progress and how with the communist measures. You know that there was a communist. There were communalism and all. So with the communist with the measure of the communist, what happened? There were Marxist, communist and all. So with this communist, China is thinking, if we also start adopting these rules, this measure, we will also become what Russia has become. And so, taking the advantage, what was the name? Mao Zedong. What he did? He established communist rule in 1949. Now let's see about the third point. The beginning of Cold War and long-term effect. What is now this Cold War? Students who are asked this question for 2 marks in the exam. What do you understand by the Cold War, and write about it in details. So, pay attention. After the World War II, the world was divided into two superpowers. The world was divided into two superpowers, America and Russia. To some extent, students, it is still going on. Okay? America and Russia superpower. Okay? During the war, both the nations were friends. During the war, both the nations were friends. But then what happened after the war? But after the war, the differences of opinions between them went on increasing. What, students? Underline the differences of opinion. Their opinions would not match. It went on increasing. Between whom? Between America and Russia. America and Russia were whose side, student, in the Second World War? America and Russia, whose side they were? They were side of allied nations. They were friends. But now the opinions matter. They are not able to become friends, or maybe they are not able to keep up their friendship. But then what happens? You see, what happens is that thus the democratic America and communist Russia became mutually opposite groups. Though they were friends once, they become mutually opposite groups. Other small nations of the world joined these two groups according to their convenience. These other nations, they joined these two groups. Now, which are these two groups? Russia and America. They are the superpowers. And so, the other small nations, wherever they want, they are joining. The war of words and the war of ideologies that both superpowers initiated in order to support or oppose each other's opinion created the atmosphere of the Cold War. Many times, the situation for the Third seem to be created. Students, what is that? Now, the ideologies, the differences of the opinions that they had, they means to these two superpowers, America and Russia. It went on continuing. Many times the situation was such, atmosphere was like that people felt, the other nations felt, now the Third World War will start. But students, somehow it did not. And we pray that it should not. All nations should stay, should live peacefully in harmony, and we need to pray for harmony and peace of the world. Okay, students, today I am going to stop over here. We shall see tomorrow about the United Nations. We are going to study about United Nations and about the organs of United Nations. So we will stop over here. Have a good day.